Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show. Discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are. Hosted by Desiree Duffy.
Hello, welcome one and all. It is time for the Books That Make You show. And I'm your host, Desiree Duffy. Today, we're talking about books that make you take that step back in time to relive iconic television shows. Now, if you've been watching WandaVision, you might know what I'm talking about. There's this thing that happens when we go back to the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s and watch nostalgic television. It's kind of like slipping on a cozy sweater, isn't it? These people, the characters from these TV shows, we invite them into our home on a weekly basis. They become like our friends. Well, today we're talking to somebody who knows a thing or two about old-time television shows and nostalgic television. He is Scott Ryan, and he is a television historian as well as a pop culture expert. And he is wickedly adept at getting people to open up to him. And that makes him just this amazing person to do interviews and write these astounding books. Now, he's the author of several of them. He did 30-something at 30, an oral history, The Last Days of Letterman, also the forthcoming Moonlighting, an oral history. He is the co-publisher at Fayetteville Mafia Press and the managing editor at the Blue Rose magazine, the director of A Voyage to Twin Peaks, and the host of the Red Room podcast. That is quite a resume. Hi, Scott. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I know that after all my credits, we don't have time to talk today, but it was nice being on the show.
I wanted to cover everything because it's your expertise and the fact that you are a publisher and a podcast host and a television historian and an interviewer. I mean, I feel that that is the total package that brings you to have this conversation with us today. So
Exactly.
Let's start with the theme of the show, that idea of nostalgic TV and how it makes us feel. Why is it that we are just so drawn to it? I mean, even if you're not watching WandaVision, you kind of get the idea that people are just drawn to these episodes because they're fun, they're quirky, and they make us feel comfortable and cozy, right?
Yeah, and I also think that it has to do with when television was quality. If you take Survivor or you take The Voice or Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, once networks realized people would tune in for television that cost no money to produce, then that's what television created. So the books that I do are kind of in the time before that, before reality TV came and changed it. Now with Netflix, we're having a swing back. And I think we're seeing it again with shows like WandaVision on Disney Plus, but The Queen's Gambit on Netflix. Everyone went crazy for that show. And I think in 20, 30 years, The Queen's Gambit is going to have the same feeling that 30-something Twin Peaks Moonlighting had back in the 80s for us now.
Do you feel writing has a lot to do with it? I mean, after all, this is a show about books and writing because you're writing a television show. And don't get me wrong, reality TV is scripted to a large degree, and a lot of people might not realize that. But is that part of it? Is actually telling a story and writing it? Does that make a difference?
Definitely. And that was when television shows respected the viewers. So they were really coming at it with a feature film quality. Again, this has started to happen again on streaming, and HBO sort of kept that mantle. But for the most of the late 90s, early 2000s, network TV, which is still where most people are going to watch because you can watch it for free if you have an antenna, they weren't giving that kind of television. So that's why I think these shows come back and mean so much, because they developed characters, they did them like feature films, and they were character pieces.
Yeah, yeah. And I know you did the Last Days of Letterman too. So even if it wasn't a written scripted show, it was still just this fact that this person, these characters, whoever, David Letterman, like you just felt like they were there. They were your best friends, right? And you just didn't get that with a lot of the reality shows. There was almost like this tendency to just want to create the bad people and the villains and make people just watch for the shock value of it.
Well, I mean, in my opinion, that was about making you feel better by making fun of someone lesser than you. So that's a different kind of watching. But that's not what I go to television for. Even to this day, I want TV that lifts me up, that connects with the character. I mean, the example that I always use is Norm from Cheers. You know, when Norm comes in that room and everyone goes, Norm, well, everyone's doing that at home too. That's your buddy. That's Norm. You want to see him have a beer with Cliff and make fun of Carla. And, you know, you want to be where everybody knows your name. That is the simple secret to television that it seems like every couple years network executives forget about, and then they come back to it. Oh, that's right. We want to go visit our friends. And that's what we really want from TV.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. As a television historian, can you tell us what that means? What is your superpower? What makes you, Scott Ryan, different than other television historians?
Well, I can fly, and that really helps. I mean, I don't, you know, everyone else can't get on the airplanes. I actually can I would do it now, but, you know, I got the headphones on.
The headset, yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, dang it. I think it's that I love television and I love writing. I love writers. And in my interviews, of course, if I'm working on Moonlighting, you want to hear from Sybil Shepherd. If I'm working on 30-something, you want to hear from Ken Olin or Mel Harris. And they give great interviews. But the writers are the one that really suffered with these characters, really brought them to life, and they give the best interviews. And I find that always that it's you get the best interview from somebody that probably never gave an interview. You know, we're not banging down the doors of these writers who have invented these characters and done so much to let us share. So I think because I'm a writer and they're a writer, we sort of bond there, and I'm interested in their work. And if you're interested in someone, it's amazing what they'll tell you.
And I think that is your superpower, is the fact that you're able to get people to open up with you and really find the truth behind some of these iconic television shows. So let's start with 30-something. Tell us a little bit, 30-something at 30, an oral history. What was it like doing that book?
Well, that was really my first real book, and it was like a dream come true to me. It was something that I'd always wanted to do, is to get to do a book, and I sort of fell into this from Twitter. You know, right now we live in a time where Twitter is so toxic, but it didn't used to be. You used to be able to just talk with strangers. And I connected with one of the writers from the show, Richard Kramer. He wrote a lot of the great classic episodes of 30-something. And I just asked him to come on my podcast and be a guest. And we really hit it off. And I think he was touched that even though he had written these episodes, at that point, it was about 28 years ago. And then I saw this 30 at 30 and I could see a book title. So I knew I had like 2 years to get this book done. But I think he was so impressed that I really cared about his work and could break down these episodes with him, that he then opened up the entire cast. He said, do you want to talk to Melanie Mayron, who played Melissa on the show? And I was like, yeah. And then it led to the next one and the next one. And I ended up talking to everyone. And then once you had that, I pretty much knew this was going to be a book. Like, it just, you're piecing together this. And I love to tell a book in their words, not mine. So this isn't what I think of the 7th episode of season 2. This is what the writer says about it, what the director, whatever the cast member thinks. And then I try to hunt down guest stars or anyone that I can get to get a story about that.
You really hustle to do this too, because that's a lot of work to track people down, to get them to say yes, to do the interview, that's just a huge undertaking. Congratulations for doing that.
Well, it takes a long time. It doesn't happen right away. And you need someone to open that door for you. You know, if I could email someone that said, I got your email from Richard Kramer, they know Richard, they're going to trust Richard. You know, every time I start a new book or a new project, it's so hard to get that first interview. The first interview is the worst. Then the door opens and it becomes easier.
And I have to imagine too that as you build up your collection of books that you've done, that subsequent books will get easier and easier to do, because it's like,
I don't think so.
No, it's not.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't feel like it. I'm starting my next book now, even though my next book hasn't come out. Moonlighting hasn't come out. I'm actually starting my follow-up. It's going to be about Fire Walk with Me, which is a David Lynch movie. And I am hustling to get this actress to do an interview, and I can't even get them to respond to me. And I'm like, man, I got 4 books. I got 15 issues of a magazine. Like, I don't deserve a response. So I don't think it gets easier. I think it's always you start at 0, and it's just whether that person wants to talk or not.
And it's interesting too. I mean, some people are just so easy, so approachable, and then others have their walls that they put up. And I guess that's just the world of celebrities and people that work in the entertainment.
And I get it. You know, I always put in my email, my books are not about gossip. We don't talk about your personal life. It's only about art and craft. That's it. And some people, it takes, you know, I feel like 10 minutes into the call, they start to realize, oh, wow, this person's interested in my craft, not, you know, who I slept with or something like that.
Exactly. Well, sometimes knowing who they slept with can be a little bit juicy and fun, but you are a historian at heart. And that's the great thing about these books is they are this oral history that we're reading and enjoying today because we lived this, or at least I lived it. I lived through 30-something and Moonlighting and Letterman. But 50, 100 years from now, this is something that people are going to look back and be able to really understand these shows. So that's awesome being able to do that.
I hope so. And I try really hard to not put what I think in as far as to steer it, you know, just capture the truth and not make it, you know, I'm trying not to say Fox News it, but I can't think of another word to say it. Like, I just try to be truthful. Yeah. No emotion.
And very objective and but respectful too, to the truth. Now, you brought up 2 things that I want to touch on. Obviously, I want to talk about Moonlighting because that's your forthcoming book. And I also, because you've worked on the Twin Peaks and Fayetteville Mafia Press, I want to talk about that as well. First, though, let's talk about Letterman. Tell us about writing The Last Days of Letterman. What was that like?
Well, you know, for all the things that I love pop culture-wise, and there's a lot of them, Dave was my TV best friend. I've had no relationship in my life longer than with David Letterman. You know, outside of my parents, that's it. I watch Dave every day from probably 86 to when he retired in 2015. And it was hard for me when he was retiring. It hurt. I mean, that was like my time every day for 1 hour. I turned the rest of the world off and I watched Dave. And the end of the series was incredible. The final 6 weeks, those episodes are some of the best hours ever produced. And just as someone who's curious about that, I wanted to know how they did it. Again, I was not trying to start a book. I wasn't thinking, this is the greatest idea for a book. I'll make millions. I just wanted to know, because I had been such a fan of late night overall and Letterman especially. I was like, you don't just kind of stumble upon these 28 episodes. And so I really hustled to get an interview with Barbara Gaines, who was the executive producer. And it took me 1.5 years of
Wow.
really hounding her before she said yes, because Letterman people are very private. That is an extremely private group. They protect Dave with all their heart. And I had to prove to them that I love Dave, and I was not out to do anything bad about Dave. I just wanted to know, how did you make these 28 episodes? And the thing that's great about that is I get emails really weekly from somebody just like me who says, I was devastated he left. Your book, helped. And I wasn't the only one who felt that way about Letterman.
And let's segue into Fayetteville Mafia Press. Tell us about starting that and the books that are published under it and how that all worked out.
I do that with my friend David Bushman. We own the company together. He is a writer as well, and I had written 30-something for Bear Manor Media, and it was a great experience. I have nothing bad to say about Bear Manor, but it wasn't author friendly, and it certainly wasn't lucrative at all. So when I was doing the Letterman book, David and I were talking about it, and we felt it was a strong enough book to launch a company, and we wanted to start it that's very author based. So we let the author choose how they want to design it. What do they want their cover? It's just all about them. What can we do to bring your vision to life? That's our first thing, not how to make money. And because, as I said, I can fly, so I can get money anytime flying people around. I don't need to make money off these books. We don't care about that. What do you want to make this book well? So we focus on pop culture and sports right now, pretty much solidly on nonfiction, because we really don't know how to step into the fiction world. And everyone in the world thinks they can write a children's book. And so we're never doing one, because everyone I meet, they say, you run a publishing company? I got a children's book for you. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. We don't do them. Dang, I really wanted to hear your pitch too.
That is so true. I laugh. I shouldn't laugh, but I have that same experience. And then when they tell you all they need you to do is help find the illustrator. That's all they need.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying anything. Children's authors are the best. I love Dr. Seuss, and I loved reading them to my kids, but that's not what I want to do with my life. I don't want to. So we sort of stay in that ability.
No, that's good. I mean, you stay with what you know, and the fact that you really care about the art, the craft, the creativity. Underneath it all, you are a creative. You are an artist, and you're letting your authors share that experience too, because you're right. Not a lot of publishers will do that. Let's switch over to Twin Peaks, especially, I mean, it's such a quirky, cult-ish show. So it's a little bit different than some of the other books that we've just talked about that have larger followings. I feel like Twin Peaks, like either you get it or you don't, right?
That's what's behind me. Either this poster scares you or it doesn't. If you've seen Twin Peaks, it scares you. Yeah, Twin Peaks really changed my life. I was in college when it came out. I remember watching it. I sat on a couch with my then girlfriend's parents watching the pilot. And by the end of the pilot, I was the only one left. Like one by one, people got up and said, what is this? All the old people were gone. And it just opened my mind to what television could do. And I've never really gotten over it since 1990. It was coming back on Showtime in 2017. And as a super fan, this is before even my books, I was just like, I want to start a magazine about Twin Peaks. I mean, we're living in a digital age. So by all means, let's do something in print. I mean, next I'm going to try to bring back the typewriter. And we launched it right here out of my basement. And, it's a beautiful, this is a cover by Blake Morrow that he did. These are all Lynch women. This is the Women of Lynch issue that had a wraparound cover. We've been so lucky. It's sold all across the globe. There's not a continent that it doesn't go to, because everyone who loves Twin Peaks is crazy for it. So I do the Blue Rose magazine as well, and it's very fun.
Oh, absolutely. So, and you have, let's just say, a rather quirky, humorous aspect of your personality as well. So, once upon a time, you did an episode of Moonlighting that you called Spooflighting. And tell us about that and how that was eventually your segue into actually doing, now you've done, and it's going to be releasing soon, the Moonlighting oral history book.
Strangely, the very first thing I ever wrote was, I guess what they call now fan fiction, an episode of Moonlighting, but I was 18. I was a senior in high school and Moonlighting was on. And I felt like I could write one. I wanted to do one. And I loved Bruce Willis, David Addison so much. He was just like a hero to me as an 18-year-old wise ass. So I made an episode where I played David Addison. It's horrible. No one will see it. Many people ask me, oh, can we see it? Like, no, you cannot, because it's horrible. I mean, I was 18 and we had it was done with VCR to VCR. I mean, it's, it was a good first step. It's the first thing I wrote, and it inspired me to create. And that's why getting to know Glenn Gordon Caron, who's the creator of Moonlighting, we talked on the phone yesterday. I mean, he called to answer a couple questions to finish up the book. And I'll never get over the person that inspired me to write, that now I'm a writer, calling me on my phone to talk to me. And he knows my name. That's crazy to me.
Oh, that's such a cool full circle type of a story.
Yeah, it really is. I have never told Glenn Gordon Caron about Spooflighting. I don't, I have not told him that I wrote an episode at all, because I don't want him to know. My mother wants me to tell him, but I am not going to.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully he doesn't see this episode. Hopefully I don't send it to him.
He talks about you all the time.
I'm sure he does. Okay, so Moonlighting. Let's talk about this. And I know, Scott, I'm going to respect your desire to not want to make any kind of salacious or, gossipy type things. So we absolutely will not talk about the bottle of Jack Daniels and Sybil Shepherd on the couch. We won't talk about that. I promise not to bring that up, okay?
Well, I just want to say that you just implied that it was me with the bottle of Jack Daniels and Sybil Shepherd on the couch. And I'm going to have some questions.
Now you have to clarify that.
You left out Bruce Willis, a bottle of Jack Daniels, and me on the couch. Wait a minute, that's not right. Yeah, there is a little, normally I don't really get into that kind of stuff in my book, but with 30-something, it was just really a great experience for all of those people. Letterman was sending off a legend into television history. Moonlighting is just not that story. I mean, that is not what Moonlighting was. Moonlighting was a creative hotbed of drama and just a lot of anger and a lot of bad things happening at once, mixed in with the love of writing and wanting to do something that had never been seen on television. So it does bleed in a little bit more into this book, but it's, again, not salacious. It's mostly about how you see your vision to the end.
And that's something too that in talking to you previously and learning about and looking at the book, I actually have an advanced reading copy of it, so I was able to peek inside and get the lowdown on some of this. But just getting some of these episodes to air, it was a spectacular accomplishment by the writers and the crew and everybody. Talk a little bit about how we're lucky actually to have had Moonlighting, considering what was going on.
I think anyone who has any passing knowledge of how television is made is going to be blown away by the stories of how this series was made. Like, it is incredible that this show happened on network TV. And basically, ABC owned Moonlighting, and this was really their first step into this. Now, in 2021, almost all the networks own the shows. That's what they do. Netflix puts on a show that they own because, hey, you're really double billing yourself. You want to be in that. But in the 80s, as Chick Igley, who's one of the writers of Moonlighting, says, that was illegal. They didn't want networks to own the own show. But once Ronald Reagan got in to be president, they figured, I don't think he's going to do anything about it. And they were testing these waters. So because there wasn't anyone minding the store, they just let the budgets roll and roll and roll. It was a network budget. It wasn't a small company's budget. It was this huge company. So because of that, they were pushing deadlines. And Glenn was a writer who said, I don't write to meet the deadline. I write to write the best thing. So if he didn't know what to write, they all sat there and waited for him to come up with it. So the crew would sit there, the actors would sit there, and they would wait for the pages. And the stories that some of them tell is just crazy.
Oh yeah. And you have this amazing way, like we talked about, of bringing those stories out. Is there any story that comes to mind, just pops up into your head, that you might want to share with us really quick? Do you have a story to tell us from any one of these books we've talked about?
Oh, well, I think I'm going to tell a Letterman story because it amazes me that I'm the one that discovered this. This is a story that really should be out, but the last episode of Dave was obviously a very big deal. Everyone was excited for it. It was going to be a normal 1-hour episode, but as they were filming it, it was going longer and longer. They had, the network started to realize we're going to have to give them extra time. Well, that meant you had to sell more commercials. You had to talk to James Corden's people and shorten his show. So, because the network only owns that 2-hour block. They filmed the show at 5:30. It airs at 11:30. The amount of things that all of these people had to do from when they stopped tape to get that episode out. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Broadcast News, the movie. It's a James L. Brooks movie. It's only the best movie ever made. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it. But there's a classic scene where they're trying to get it on tape on time, and the girl's running. Joan Cusack is running with the tape. That's pretty much what they had to do. It was like within minutes of them pushing that tape in to hit play to put the last Letterman episode out. It almost did not make it to air because of all of the things they had to do. And I just discovered that in interviewing the editor and, hearing this. Then I would ask other people and they were like, oh yeah. And we missed the wrap party and worked there 30 years and didn't get to go to anything because we were editing. And all of that. So I think, those are the things that I discover by talking to someone who doesn't normally give an interview.
Oh, yeah. And just taking that deep dive into getting the story behind the story is amazing. Scott Ryan from Fayetteville Mafia Press. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. Can you tell people where to find you, your social media, website, and where they can go to get and when they can expect the forthcoming Moonlighting book?
Yes, you can order at FayettevilleMafiaPress.com, or you can go to ScottRyanProductions.com. All the books and magazines are at both places. You can follow me on Twitter at ScottLuckStory.
Excellent. Again, thank you for being here. And I know you don't have the book cover yet, but you do have the photo for the book. Do you want to hold that out?
This is the photo that's used for the book cover. We are going to print probably this week on it. So it comes out June 1st. So I really put it to bed today, and then I'm doing this first interview. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, well, it's been an honor to have you here for this interview. Thank you for joining us. And we'll have you back again when it gets a little bit closer to the Moonlighting book release, and we'll talk more about that book as it gets ready to be released. Okay.
That sounds great. I loved being on the show, and please don't contact me to have you fly around the country. I've got a lot to do. I can't.
Okay. We'll save your energy for typing, not flying. Okay.
Appreciate it.
All right. Once again, thank you for joining us today, Scott Ryan, and thank you for being here on the Books That Make You show. You can find out more about us on our website. It's booksthatmakeyou.com. We're also on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Please be sure to subscribe. And until next time, all of my bookish buddies, please enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The executive producer for Books That Make You is Desiree Duffy. Produced and sound mastered by Phil Giangrande. Engineering by Dave Nabox. Social media and promotion by Bree Sweeter. For more, visit booksthatmakeyou.com.